What if I told you that there are specific psychological and behavioral patterns that emerge when someone has been physically intimate with another person? Patterns so consistent that relationship psychologists can identify them with surprising accuracy. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn might save you from months of confusion, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation. Picture this scenario. Something feels off in your relationship. You can't quite put your finger on it, but the energy has shifted. She's different somehow. Not in an obvious way. She hasn't suddenly become cold or distant. In fact, she might even be more affectionate than usual. But there's something in her eyes. Something in the way she moves through conversations. Something in how she responds to your touch that feels unfamiliar. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You push the thoughts away. You convince yourself that you're just being insecure or jealous without reason. But deep down, your intuition is screaming at you that something has changed. Here's what most men don't realize. Your gut instinct is often picking up on subtle behavioral and psychological cues that your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. These aren't random feelings. They're your subconscious mind detecting patterns that don't align with her baseline behavior. And when it comes to infidelity, specifically recent physical intimacy with someone else, there are distinct psychological shifts that occur. These changes aren't about catching someone in a lie. They're about understanding the deeper behavioral and emotional patterns that emerge when someone has crossed a boundary. Before we dive into the specific signs, you need to understand something crucial about human psychology and guilt. When someone engages in behavior that conflicts with their stated values or commitments, they experience what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. This is the psychological discomfort that comes from holding two contradictory beliefs or behaviors simultaneously. For example, I'm in a committed relationship versus I just slept with someone else. The human mind can't comfortably hold both of these truths at the same time. So it does something fascinating. It starts making behavioral adjustments to reduce this internal conflict. Sometimes this shows up as overcompensation, sometimes as withdrawal, sometimes as projection, sometimes as subtle changes in how she relates to you physically and emotionally. These aren't conscious choices. They're psychological defense mechanisms operating beneath her awareness. And when you understand these patterns, you stop second-guessing your intuition and start seeing the situation with clarity. So, let's break down the 8 signs, starting with one of the most telling. Sign number 1. Sudden change in sexual behavior. This is often the most noticeable shift, and it can manifest in 2 opposite ways. Either she becomes unusually sexually available and experimental, introducing new techniques, positions, or behaviors that she's never shown interest in before, or she becomes sexually withdrawn, avoiding intimacy or seeming distracted and disconnected during sex. Let me explain the psychology behind both patterns. When someone has been intimate with another person, they often experience what's called spillover effect. The sexual energy, techniques, or dynamics from that encounter unconsciously transfer into the primary relationship. If she's learned something new or experienced something different, she might unconsciously introduce it with you. Not because she's trying to reveal anything, but because it's fresh in her body's memory. On the flip side, if she's experiencing guilt or shame, she might withdraw sexually because being intimate with you triggers the cognitive dissonance I mentioned earlier. Every time you touch her, her mind is reminded of the boundaries she crossed, and this creates psychological discomfort that manifests as avoidance. Here's the key detail to watch for. It's not just a change in frequency. It's a change in quality, energy, and presence. Does she seem like she's somewhere else mentally during intimacy? Does she avoid eye contact? Does she rush through it or seem like she's going through the motions? These aren't definitive proof of anything, but they're psychological red flags worth noting. But here's where things get even more revealing. Sign number 2. Overcompensation in affection. This one catches a lot of men off guard because it seems counterintuitive. You'd think that if someone cheated, they'd become cold and distant, right? Sometimes, yes. But often the opposite happens. She becomes unusually affectionate, extra complimentary, overly attentive to your needs. She's suddenly buying you gifts, cooking your favorite meals, initiating date nights, telling you how much she loves you. And you're sitting there, thinking, This is great. The relationship is better than ever. But here's the psychological reality. This is often guilt-driven overcompensation. When someone violates their own values or the boundaries of a relationship, they experience what psychologists call reparative behavior. Subconsciously, they're trying to balance the scales. They're trying to prove to themselves and to you that they're still a good partner, still committed, still loving. It's not manipulative in the conscious sense. It's a psychological defense mechanism designed to reduce their internal guilt and maintain their self-image as a good person. The key difference between genuine affection and overcompensation is consistency and authenticity. Genuine affection flows naturally and feels emotionally connected. Overcompensation feels performative, almost like she's trying too hard. There's a subtle desperation or anxiety underlying her gestures. Ask yourself, does her affection feel genuine and connected, or does it feel like she's checking boxes and performing the role of a good girlfriend? And this connects to the third sign, which is even more subtle. Now, I know what you're thinking. This one seems obvious. But it's not just about being protective of her phone. It's about a sudden change in phone behavior. Maybe she used to leave her phone lying around casually, and now it's always face down or in her purse. Maybe she used to answer texts in front of you, and now she angles her screen away or steps into another room. Maybe she's changed her passcode. Maybe she's suddenly very interested in deleting her message history or clearing her browser. The psychological principle here is evidence management. When someone has something to hide, they become hyper-aware of potential discovery. Every notification becomes a threat. Every moment you're near her phone triggers low-level anxiety. But here's the nuance that's important. It's not about the phone itself. It's about the behavioral shift. If she's always been private with her phone, that's her baseline. But if there's a sudden change from openness to secrecy, that shift is psychologically significant. And often, this isn't even about hiding messages from the other person. It's about hiding the emotional affair, the ongoing communication, or the evidence of connection that might have preceded or followed the physical encounter. Have you noticed sudden changes in phone behavior in your relationships? Drop a comment and share your experience. You might be helping someone else recognize what they've been missing. But here's a sign that most men completely overlook. Sign number 4. Projection and accusations. This is one of the most psychologically revealing patterns, and it operates on a fascinating principle. She suddenly starts accusing you of being unfaithful. She questions where you've been, who you've been talking to, why you came home late. She becomes suspicious of your female friends, your coworkers, your social media activity. And you're completely blindsided because you haven't done anything wrong. Here's what's happening psychologically. It's called projection. When someone engages in behavior they feel guilty about, they unconsciously project that behavior onto others. It serves 2 psychological functions. First, it reduces their own guilt by normalizing the behavior. If everyone cheats, then what she did isn't so bad, right? Second, it deflects attention away from her own actions. If she keeps you on the defensive, explaining yourself and proving your loyalty, you're not looking at her behavior. This isn't always conscious manipulation. Often, it's an unconscious psychological defense mechanism. The key pattern to notice: the accusations come out of nowhere, they're not based on any actual evidence, and they coincide with other behavioral changes. If she's suddenly convinced you're cheating when nothing in your behavior has changed, ask yourself, what's driving this suspicion? Is it actually about you? Or is it her own guilt manifesting as projection? And this leads us to one of the most emotionally painful signs. Sign number 5, emotional withdrawal and distance. This one hurts because it feels like you're losing her, and you can't understand why. She's physically present, but emotionally absent. Conversations become surface level. She's less interested in your day, your thoughts, your feelings. She seems distracted, distant, like her mind is somewhere else. When you try to connect emotionally, she shuts down or changes tea.
He subject.
The emotional intimacy that used to define your relationship has evaporated, and you're left feeling like you're talking to a stranger. Here's the psychological explanation. Emotional intimacy requires vulnerability and authenticity. When someone is hiding something significant, especially something that violates the relationship. They can't show up authentically in emotional conversations. Every deep conversation becomes a minefield because she has to carefully manage what she shares, what she reveals, how much truth she can tell without exposing what she's hiding. So instead of navigating that psychological complexity, she withdraws. She creates emotional distance because distance feels safer than the risk of exposure. Additionally, if she's developed emotional or physical connection with someone else, her emotional energy is now divided. She's investing emotionally elsewhere, which leaves less emotional availability for you. You might notice she's less curious about your life, less engaged in planning your future together, less interested in the small daily rituals that create intimacy. It's not that she doesn't care. It's that her psychological and emotional bandwidth is being consumed by managing her guilt and her divided attention. But there's another pattern that's even more specific. Sign number 6. Changes in routine and unexplained absences. She suddenly has more work events, more girls' nights, more reasons to be unavailable. Her schedule becomes less predictable. She's vaguer about her plans. Maybe she's taking longer to respond to texts. Maybe she's coming home later than usual with explanations that feel just slightly off. Maybe she's suddenly interested in activities or hobbies she never mentioned before. The psychological pattern here is opportunity creation. If there's ongoing contact with someone else, whether it's continued physical involvement or the development of an emotional affair, she needs to create opportunities to maintain that connection. This requires building in time away from you, creating plausible explanations, and maintaining flexibility in her schedule. Now, here's the critical nuance. People's routines change for many legitimate reasons. A new project at work, a friend going through a crisis, a new fitness class. These are all normal life developments. The red flag is when these changes coincide with other signs, and when her explanations feel vague, defensive, or inconsistent. If you ask simple questions about her evening and she becomes irritated or defensive, that's psychologically revealing. People who have nothing to hide don't get defensive about basic questions. Pay attention to the pattern. Is she creating more distance and opportunity, and is she uncomfortable with normal curiosity about her time? Sign number 7. Sudden changes in appearance and self-care. She's suddenly very invested in how she looks. New clothes, new hairstyle, new workout routine, more attention to makeup and grooming, especially when these changes don't seem to be for you. She's dressing up for work, for girls' nights, for errands, but she's casual and low effort when it's just the two of you. The psychological principle is impression management for a new audience. When we're attracted to someone new or receiving attention from someone else, we unconsciously increase our effort in appearance. It's a biological and psychological response to wanting to be attractive to the person whose attention we're receiving. Now, self-improvement isn't inherently suspicious. People go through phases of wanting to look better and feel more confident. The red flag is when the effort seems directed outward, away from the relationship, rather than enhancing the connection between you. Ask yourself, is she dressing up and then seeming disappointed when you're the only one who sees her? Does she seem to be maintaining her appearance for contexts that don't include you? And the final sign might be the most subtle but most revealing of all. Sign number 8. Your gut tells you something is off. This isn't about paranoia or insecurity. This is about trusting the pattern recognition system that millions of years of evolution have built into your nervous system. Your subconscious mind is processing thousands of microsignals that your conscious mind can't articulate. Subtle changes in her tone of voice, micro-expressions that flash across her face, inconsistencies in her stories, shifts in her energy and presence. When your gut is telling you something is wrong, it's usually because your subconscious has detected a pattern that doesn't match her baseline behavior. The key is distinguishing between anxiety-driven paranoia and genuine intuition. Paranoia is general, vague, and usually stems from your own insecurities. It doesn't have specific behavioral evidence backing it up. Intuition is specific. It points to concrete changes. It's based on deviations from established patterns. If you can identify multiple signs from this list, changes in sexual behavior, overcompensation, phone secrecy, projection, emotional withdrawal, routine changes, appearance shifts, and your gut is confirming that something feels off, you're not being paranoid. You're recognizing a pattern. Now, here's what's critically important to understand. These signs are not proof of infidelity. They're behavioral patterns that warrant attention and honest conversation. People can exhibit some of these behaviors for completely innocent reasons. Stress at work can cause emotional withdrawal. A new fitness goal can explain appearance changes. Personal growth can shift sexual dynamics. The red flag is when multiple signs appear simultaneously, when they represent departures from her baseline behavior, and when they cluster together in a short time period. If you're seeing this pattern, the healthy response isn't to become a detective or an interrogator. It's to have an honest, direct conversation about what you're noticing and how it's affecting you. Here's the ultimate truth about these signs. They're not really about catching someone in the act. They're about recognizing when the foundation of trust and transparency in your relationship has been compromised. Because even if she hasn't physically been with someone else, if multiple of these patterns are present, it means something significant has shifted in how she relates to you and the relationship. And you deserve to be in a relationship where you don't have to play detective, where trust is the foundation, where both people show up with honesty, integrity, and full presence. These signs are simply tools to help you see clearly what might be happening beneath the surface. What you do with that clarity is up to you. But never ignore your intuition. And never settle for a relationship that requires you to constantly question reality. If this video opened your eyes to patterns you've been noticing, hit that like button. It helps this content reach men who need to see it. And if you want more insights into relationship psychology, attraction dynamics, and understanding human behavior at a deeper level, subscribe and turn on notifications. I'm breaking down the hidden psychology of dating and relationships every single week. Most importantly, I want to hear from you. Have you noticed any of these signs in your relationship? Or have you experienced these patterns from the other side? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else navigate their situation with more clarity. Remember, awareness is power. Understanding these psychological patterns doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you informed. Trust yourself. Trust your intuition. And never apologize for wanting truth and transparency in your relationships. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.